What's up everyone, I'm CallumOnToast, and in today's video, once again, I'm going to be showcasing another triple buff team in the Open Great League with my signature Fire and Dragon core with Rapidash, Shadow Dragonair, and Shadow Kingdra. Now before we go any further, I want to say, similar to the recent Shadow Kabutops video that I made, Shadow Rapidash is also another Pokemon that accidentally released for a few hours during the recent Team Rocket Takeover event, so if you happen to have one, I'd love to showcase it on the channel. Obviously, the Great League will be going out of rotation in just a few hours time, so there's no rush to send in the battles. But if you have access to this Pokemon, let me know in the comments and maybe I can feature your battles later in the season. Anyways, Drill Run now costs just 40 energy, which is a massive buff for Rapidash in terms of its pacing, as it can now reach a Drill Run after just 2 Incinerates, making it on par with the likes of Typhlosion, Armarouge, and Salazzle. It also has great coverage in the form of Wild Charge, but you could also opt for Flame Charge to ramp up your own attack stats. I'm sure you guys have seen Kingdra featured on basically every GBL YouTuber's channel by now. Surf is a massive upgrade in terms of its consistency, and Dragonair has the exact same typing coverage, just sort of flipped around in terms of the 35 energy move being Aqua Tail, a water type move, and its 45 energy charge move being Wrap, a normal type move. Now, the first set of this video is from just a few hours ago, but the rest of these battles were actually done way back during the first day of the season, so do excuse the low rank. But anyways, with that being said, let's get into the question of the day. We're now pretty much a full week into the Forever Forward GBL season, so I want to know what has been your favorite move update so far this season. Let me know in the comment section down below, and with that being said, let's get into the battles now. So go into the first battle, leading Rapidash into Kingdra. This is really not a great matchup for me. Incinerate's going to be double resisted, and as well, my backline is very neutral into Kingdra, as of course I've got my own Kingdra and a Shadow Dragonair. We swap into our own Kingdra, they bank a lot of energy, and they come in with a Jump Bluff where they can sponge the damage pretty well. The opponent gonna go for an Energy Ball, which doesn't quite get the knockout. They do drop my defense, but we still barely live one more Fairy Wind to get off a second Swift before they farm me down. We come back in with the Rapidash, and the opponent actually does not farm up to the acrobatics, maybe expecting the next Incinerate to get the knockout, but it actually barely doesn't. So we come out with a Wild Charge loaded. However, I'm just going to settle for a Drill Run expecting a shield anyways, but the opponent actually not going to bother shielding there. I'm going to come in with my Shadow Dragonair. I have put them into range, but hopefully I can Dragon Breath farm them down, and their final Pokemon is going to be a Shadow Kanto Ninetales. Now, I do resist everything, however, 2 Weather Balls with the Ember damage will actually be enough damage to get the knockout here, so not actually the most comfortable matchup for me, especially since I am now down a shield. We're gonna have to shield this as the opponent is gonna fire off the next Weather Ball, but you can see my switch clock is now up, so the opponent will outpace me to a 3rd Weather Ball here. However, I'm gonna swap out, and I swap out 1 turn early, which gives me a full Incinerate through as I swap, which means I've now got the energy for the Drill Run. I anticipate the opponent swaps back into Kingdra. Drill Run gets the knockout. They come back in with the Ninetales, and they can reach another charge move, but it's just too little too late for them now, as Weather Ball gets the knockout. I can Dragon Breath, farm them down, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's on there into the next battle. We're going to see Licky in the lead. So, not the best matchup for me, just because Rollouts are going to hit for super effective damage here. But Body Slam isn't going to deal too much. So, I'm actually just going to bank a Drill Run here. And then I'm going to swap into my Shadow Kingdra. With an ABB style team, especially when you see a fairly neutral lead, it is always important to swap into one of your back Pokemon, because you want to bait out any potential threats to your backline whilst your lead Pokemon is still healthy. However, in this case, it looks like the opponent comes in with a Shadow Quagsire, which is pretty strong into my lead Pokemon, but actually not that great into my backline. So here, I'm just going to fight for switch advantage. We are, of course, now down 2 shields. However, we've got so much energy. We go straight for Surf. Surf, not shielded, and it puts them into perfect Dragon Breath farm down range. Their final Pokemon is a Sableye, but they're not going to be able to sponge the damage from these Surfs very well. We're able to reach a first Surf there, and we can get to a second Surf already. And at this point, I'm not going to allow the opponent to fully farm me down. Instead, swapping into Shadow Dragonair, trying to deal as much damage with the Dragon Breaths as possible, but actually, they overfarm, they allow me to reach the Aqua Tail. They probably realize Rapidash has the Drill Run already loaded, and so they just concede the match. So, GG stuff on there into next battle. I'm going to see Galarian Stunfisk in the lead. Positive lead matchup for me. The opponent's going to be safe swapping into a Fearow. And whilst we do have coverage in Wild Charge, unfortunately, they do just barely outpace me there. They fire off the Drill Peck. I'm going to swap into Dragonair. However, I'm actually not that confident that I can live a Drill Peck and get a full Dragon Breath farm down. So I'm actually once again going to go down 2 shields here. But again, I do have a lot of residual energy. So if they come back in with the Stunfisk, I will be able to reach back-to-back Aqua Tails very comfortably. And Aqua Tail, whilst it is non-stat stab damage, it's not going to hit anywhere near as hard as a Surf from the Shadow Kingdra. It does threaten a shield because you're going to see this is going to do about 50% of their HP. The opponent does throw on perfect timing there, overfarming by a single mud shot, throwing just before we reach another Aquatail, but Rapidash already have back-to-back drill runs here. So the first one should be grabbing the final shield, but actually not going to throw straight away. I'm kind of reading that they're probably going to have another flying type Pokemon in the back, in which case I actually want to save my Rapidash in the back line because it does have access to Wild Charge. So here we're going to see it's going to be a Gust Shadow Pidgeot. We go for the Wild Charge here. Wild Charge going to hit for super effective damage. It will drop my defense, but they threw straight away on the Stunfisk, which means they don't reach a Rock Slide. We get the Incinerate farm down, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on there. Into the next battle, we're going to see a Fortress in the lead. That is a great matchup for me. The opponent's going to be safe swapping into a Malamar, and you know what? I'm just going to go straight for a Drill Run here. Drill Run, going to connect. It really doesn't deal that much damage, however, as it is non-stab, and of course, Drill Run does actually just do less damage this season. We come in with the Dragonair. We force a CMP tie, and here I feel like I can live a foul play, and Dragonair farm down, but actually, no, the opponent is able to Sideway farm me down instead, which really isn't ideal because now we've lost switch advantage. We had such a dominant matchup with our Rapidash into the Fortress, but I guess it just depends what their final Pokemon is. They're going to come in with a Medicham. They actually throw on alignment up against an Incinerate user, which is typically a big mistake, but we swap out, we make the catch there, but because we've already landed one Incinerate's worth of damage, the opponent has now put themselves into range where Surf gets the knockout. They can Psycho Cut farm me down, but Rapidash has so much energy already. They don't throw at the best timing there. They throw after just a single Psycho Cut, which means I can now farm up to back-to-back Wild Charges, and the Incinerate damage has put them into range where a single Wild Charge will knock out. So, of course, we've got the final shield with the first Wild Charge. Wild Charge number 2 gets the KO there, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on there into the next battle, and I will say with this team, I felt like I was making quite a lot of mistakes, but the team was just so good that I was still winning anyways. Also, maybe some misplays here and there by the opponents, but either way, into the next battle, we're going to see a Sky Attack coming from Altaria, going to deal big damage, but I no shield, hoping the opponent will also no shield, because I kind of need that damage to land. They're now going to come in with Empoleon, where unfortunately, they are going to resist all of my damage. However, I go for Surf, and Surf is going to deal some decent damage there. The opponent is, I believe, at back-to-back charge moves already. Swift won't quite get the knockout from this range, so I'm going to shoot the first charge move, then I will let the next one go through. Drill Peck does get me fairly low, but I do resist the Metal Sound damage, and here I'm going to farm up to a Swift and a Surf before throwing. Now, I don't expect the Altaria to come back in, but either way, I'm just going to go straight for a Surf, and the opponent actually comes in with a Go-Goat, which does resist Surf. However, they end up shielding anyways. So at this point, I'm going to look to shield here, expecting a Rock Slide. The opponent goes for the Rock Slide there. I expect the opponent will eventually swap back into Altaria, and they make the perfect catch there, but we can go for a slight undercharge. All I need to do here is ensure that I still reach another wrap up against the Go-Goat, and I should still be in a decent position. Now, I don't really know how much they will overfarm here, so I tried to catch the charge move. It doesn't work out for me, and suddenly, things are looking a little bit tricky for me. However, we come back in with the Dragonair. The opponent, are they going straight for Rock Slide? No, they bait with the Leaf Blade. They probably expected Rapidash to come back in, which was very low, but now they have to full send a second Leaf Blade, which means one Incinerate gets the farm down before they reach another charge move, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on there into the next battle, and we are now going to see some battles from earlier in the season. The opponent is going to be leading with a Wigglytuff, which is a great lead matchup for me. Then they swap into Skeledirge, which is also still fine for me, as we can go straight for a Drill Run. We're now going to come in with the Shadow Kingdra, and I should live a Shadow Ball here, but I'm going to shield anyways. They actually bait with a Torch Song. That is so painful to shield up a double resisted bait move that boosts up their Incinerate damage. But anyways, they're going to come back in with the Wigglytuff. And whilst Charms are dealing less damage this season, unfortunately, that kind of puts me in an awkward position where they actually end up getting the perfect farm down there just before I reach another charge move. And then unfortunately for me, of course, they've got Wigglytuff. They're probably going to have Jellicent in the back. And this team really doesn't have great coverage into Jellicent at all. Kind of just realizing that right now. As you can see, only Wild Charge and Drill Run are going to hit for neutral damage. Everything else, in terms of the charge moves, is going to be resisted. But we come back in with the Rapidash. Do we still have a slither of hope here? They full sent a Shadow Ball for some reason, which is honestly really strange. Don't know why they did that. But Drill Run coming through, they no shield that. Do we still have a chance here? Let's see. Swift is going to hit for neutral damage. It gets me fairly low. Incinerates. Oh, unfortunately, they're still able to charm farm me down despite the fact that it is resisted, and it did get the nerf this season. But either way, GG's to a trainer. I really did not play that very well. But into the next battle, we're going to see Corviknights in the lead. The opponent is eventually going to swap out into a Gastrodon. Of course, Gastrodon got buffed this season with Earth Power, now costing less energy. I'm going to shield, and they actually end up baiting with a Body Slam. So of course, that's not ideal for me. I'm going to go for a Rap here to debuff their defense, which means these Dragon Breaths are now starting to add up. However, unfortunately, I'm in range where Body Slam will definitely get the knockout. However, if they lose track of my energy here, they try and commit to a full Mud-Slap farm down, I'm actually going to be able to reach another Arctotail here before they get the full farm down, and that is huge for me. Because Rapidash has a ton of loaded energy. They're going to come in with a Clodsire. I'm of course going to come in with my Shadow Kingdra. Unfortunately, because they do get the farm down there, they will just barely be able to reach an Earthquake before I get to a Surf. An Earthquake, of course, got buffed this season. It does huge damage, but I anticipate the opponent will swap back into Corviknight, so we come in with the Rapidash. They fire off the Air Cutter. I can now overfarm just a little bit here, but they do get the boost, so sand attacks are adding up. Wild Charge gets the knockout, but of course, that drops my defense here. Can I still reach back-to-back drill runs? It's going to be super close. First one does decent damage, and we do just narrowly reach a second drill run in time. Drill run number 2 takes out the Clodsire, and I'm able to take that game. However, I believe I did have a Charge Move loaded on my Kingdra anyway, so if they did get the farm down there, I think I probably would have been fine. But either way, GG to our trainer into the next battle. We're going to see Kingdra in the lead once again, but this time, as we swap into our Dragonair, the opponent is actually going to choose to stay in. Now, we can go for a Rap here, and Rap is going to debuff their defense, and hopefully, this should allow me to Dragon Breath farm them down. But let's see, Rap is going to connect there. I actually throw a Charge Move, because if I'm at a Charge Move, the opponent should have a move loaded as well, but they end up swapping and catching it onto Licky Licky. So very nice play there. I'm actually going to bank the energy and then come in with my Rapidash. I should live any one Charge Move, and I'm already at a drill run here, so I will just throw this straight away. The opponent opting for the extra fast move instead. Drill run, gonna get them very low. Unfortunately, they barely hang on there, and they can reach another move. But they full sent a Shadow Ball. I don't really know why they did that. It doesn't really matter, I guess, as they're not going to reach another Charge Move into whatever comes in. But we Dragon Breath farm them down, and their final Pokemon is going to be Unova Stunfisk. So all I've got to do here is make sure the opponent does not catch a Surf onto their Kingdra, as that would be absolutely devastating. I'm going to try and swap out and catch a Charge Move there. It turns out I threw on CMP, which is not what I wanted. But either way, I'm going to eventually swap out, and the opponent actually swaps at the same time. But that should be fine with me, because now I can just safely shield up the Charge Move. They go for the Surf there for some reason. Doesn't really matter. Now we can go for Surf into Unova Stunfisk. It's super effective damage. It gets the KO, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG Swimmer into the next battle. I see Rapidash into Tinkaton. So this is a great lead matchup for me. The opponent's going to be safe swapping into Seismitoad, and Seismitoad is a little bit of an annoying safe swap here just because they can go straight for Icy Wind. We come in with the Kingdra just because Icy Wind is going to hit for neutral damage rather than up against my Dragonair, where of course it would be super effective. Here, we're going to go for a Surf. They end up shielding the first move there. Now, by the time I throw a Charge Move and land one, I'm going to be double debuff. So I'm actually not entirely sure if a Surf will get the knockout from this range, but we're going to try anyway. I believe I throw on CMP here. Surf is still going to get the knockout. However, what this does is set up a pretty nasty farm down for the Tinkaton, so I actually end up swapping out of that matchup, and it backfires massively because they do have a very hard answer in the form of Gastrodon. We're going to no-shield this. Body Slam doesn't quite get the knockout, so that does allow me to reach another Drill Run here. However, unfortunately, it's going to be game over as Drill Run doesn't threaten the shield. We can Dragon Breath farm them down with our Shadow Dragonair, but there's just no way I'm going to be able to take out the Tinkaton here. Kingdra is very low. We did clear the debuff, so we do have a Surf loaded, but here I kind of have to call a bait. The opponent is going to full send the Gigaton Hammer, and as a result, that's going to be GG's. We can fire off the Surf, but of course, they can just safely shield up the last Charge Move, go for the Fairy Wind farm down, and I end up losing that game. But GG Stop in there into the next battle. I can see Rapidash into Hisuian Electrode. So pretty good matchup for me. The opponent's going to be safe swapping into Seismitoad once again. So once again, we're going to come in with our Shadow Kingdra. We're going to no shield as they fire off the Icy Wind. You can see 2 Icy Winds will pretty much get the KO there with the Mudshot damage, which isn't really ideal for me. But we go for Surf, and once again, they end up shielding that first Charge Move. So potentially up against a Seismitoad safe swap, I should be looking to bait with a Swift the first time around. But either way, we're now going to go for a Surf, and we do know that Surf number 2 from this range should KO despite being double debuffed, but they're actually going to double shield. So at this point, Icy Wind gonna get the knockout. I'm actually gonna come back in with my Rapidash here. I don't want to reveal my final Pokemon just yet, and I realize I can throw on CMP with another Icy Wind, win CMP, and Duron from this range will get the knockout. As well as Mud Shots don't really add up that much over time, and here, of course, my charge moves aren't gonna be that great, so I'm actually gonna swap out, catch a resisted Wild Charge onto my Dragonair. The opponent gonna bank some energy, but I don't believe they banked quite another charge move just yet, and now they swap into Aegislash, where of course, not really great for the Dragonair. However, we do have a fire type in the back. So here, all I'm gonna do, fire off another Arctotail. I'm then gonna try and bank a Wrap before I swap out of this matchup, and I will eventually swap into my Rapidash, go for that combination play, and fire off the Drill Run. Drill Run is going to be, of course, connecting there, but they can still tank this. However, I know they're gonna win CMP. I don't really care too much about that. I just want to force them to throw their energy straight away, which they're going to end up doing. Now, of course, I expect them to swap back into the Electrode, but we've got the Wrap loaded, so I'm going to throw this straight away. Looks like we lag a little bit there, but it doesn't really matter. Wrap gets the knockout. We can now reach an Arctotail up against the Aegislash coming back in, and of course, from this range, very low HP, it gets the knockout, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up into next battle. I'm going to see Melmetal in the lead. So, a good matchup for me. The opponent is going to be swapping out into a Mantine, and I will actually be able to reach a Wild Charge before they reach a Water Pulse. So, Wild Charge, going to be shielded, but now I'm in a really awkward situation because they very likely have Twister. Twister is super effective, and it's going to do big damage. Here, we're going to fire off a Swift. I think maybe that was a CMP tie. It's kind of hard to tell when these battles are sped up, but yes, that was a CMP tie. Unfortunately, I'm going to lose Switch advantage, but I'm thinking maybe if I shield once with my Rapidash, I can go for a full Incinerate farm down, but we're going to find out that is definitely not the case. As you can see, 2 more Incinerates definitely will not get the KO. However, what it will do is put them into range where even a double resisted Drill Run, non-stab, will get the knockout. Once again, I didn't want to reveal my final Pokemon, and also a Twister would have done quite a lot of damage there into my Dragonair. But anyways, they're going to come back in with the Melmetal. We go for Drill Run, but they swap and they catch it onto Sylveon. So here, I'm now going to go for a Wild Charge. Wild Charge is going to be shielded, and now I swap into my Shadow Dragonair. They do just barely outpace me in this matchup. The opponent fires off the Side Shock. I'm going for the Arctotail. I'm hoping this should get the knockout here. But actually, Arctotail barely doesn't get the KO, and even worse for me, I believe Sylveon now left with a Side Shock loaded, which is literally worst case scenario for me, because now we have to come in, we have to farm down the Melmetal before they reach a charge move. And the opponent is unfortunately going to get damage registration error, forcing my final shield, which means, of course, now they can reach the charge move with the Sylveon. And all shields are now down, so Side Shock gets the knockout, and unfortunately I lose that game. But GG's up there into the next battle. We're going to see Ledian in the lead, so this is going to be a good matchup for me. Of course, they're still going to have Rollout, which is super effective, but they swap into a Seaking. Now, this is quite tricky for me because, once again, they are going to be a Pokemon that kind of core breaks the team here, having access to Drill Run and Icy Wind, which is going to hit most of the team for super effective damage. Of course, Kingdra is going to take neutral damage here, which is okay. However, Swift not quite going to be enough damage to get the knockout, and so the opponent going to no-shield. And at this point, I'm actually just going to let the Kingdra go down. We've put them into range where this time we can definitely Incinerate farm them down with the Rapidash, and they shouldn't be able to reach another charge route either. So we come out with a Wild Charge loaded, but their final Pokemon is going to be a Seismitoad. This is really not ideal for me because they now have super effective damage in the form of Icy Wind to throw into my Dragonair. So I'm definitely going to shield here, but this is going to debuff my attack stat, and now they can swap back into Ledian. We're going to go for a Wrap here. Wrap is not really going to deal too much damage, and the opponent is going to no-shield the first move. However, I don't believe this is enough for the acrobatics, so I no-shield just a Dynamic Punch. I'm now going to look to overfarm, and actually, I'm not going to throw a charge move. Instead, I'm going to bank the energy, and because I've debuffed them, we can come in with the Rapidash, and I'm able to fully farm them down. That is huge for me. Drill Run should be grabbing the final shield, and we've banked a Wrap on our Shadow Dragonair. So the opponent, they might be at the charge move. It looks like they're not actually, but either way, it doesn't really matter, as Wrap will get the knockout from that range, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG swap there into the next battle. We're going to see a Kanto Marowak in the lead. So, not great for me. I'm going to be swapping into my Shadow Dragonair, and the opponent is actually going to choose to stay in this matchup. So, we can actually outpace them here, fire off the Alcatel, and Alcatel is going to be shielded. We can actually outpace them to the next move as well. So, I'm going to shield here as they fire off the Bone Club, but then they swap into a Feraligatr. Now, this is where Rap dealing more damage is going to be very helpful for me, as Rap going to do big damage there. It drops their defense, and once again, that puts them into range where because they throw straight away, I can come in, get off 2 Incinerates, go for the full farm down, and come out with a Drill Run loaded. Now they come back in with the Kanto Marowak. I'm going straight for Drill Run here. Drill Run not going to deal too much damage, but it actually grabs the final shield, and now I swap into my Shadow Kingdra. I'm able to catch the Bone Club, which I wasn't really trying to do there, but either way, their final Pokemon is going to be a Furret. Now, can I get the knockout with a Surf from this range? That is the question. I'm going to overfarm as much as I feel like I can. We are very close to the next Surf here. So Surf, we throw, Surf gets the knockout. That is huge for me, and we're able to reach another Surf into Kanto Marowak. Surf from this range gets the knockout. This time it looks like we benefit from damage registration error, and I'm able to take that game. But GG's up in there into the next battle. I can see Jumpluff in the lead. Now, I will say, feels like every time I win the lead, I actually end up kind of misplaying the match and then sometimes end up losing. Whereas when I lose the lead, I actually do pretty well to fight back and win those games. But anyways, we're going to swap into Kingdra. I'm expecting a Shadow Ball here. Shadow Ball does big damage, but I can still reach a Swift. I don't know what their secondary charge move is going to be. Could be Thunder Punch, Fire Punch, Triple Axle. Quite a lot of options there on the Lopunny now this season, but they're going to come back in with the Jumpluff. We fire off the Swift, and Swift not really going to deal too much damage there, but we can come back in with the Rapidash. So we're going to shield as the opponent is going to full send an Acrobatics before swapping into a Gust Luminion. Now I'm going to go straight for Wild Charge here. This should be grabbing a shield. Wild Charge is going to be shielded, and now we swap into our Dragonair. I'm going to shield this as the opponent has farmed up to a potential Silver Wind, and Silver Wind, whilst it is non-stab, it's a bug type move, so it's not exactly going to hit for super effective damage. Dragonair is pretty glassy, but at this point, of course, all shields are down. Silver Wind, number 2, actually gets me really low there, and we don't even reach an Arquitel, and that is going to be game over. The opponent, well, they can outpace me anyways. The opponent, going to go for Acrobatics. Acrobatics gets the KO, and just like I mentioned here before this battle, every time we win the lead, we somehow seem to lose, but either way, GG to our trainer into next battle, and this is a lost lead, so potentially this means we will end up winning this game. Honestly, I don't really know how that works, but either way, we're going to go for an Arquitel. Arquitel is going to be shielded, but this time this is a Shadow, so if they want to, they can double shield, and they can certainly go for a full farm down, but they actually come in with a... I think that was a charge bug there. Rap is going to deal big damage, and it drops their defense. Hopefully this puts them into 1 Incinerate farm down range. If it's 2, then actually they will reach another charge boost. So I'm actually going to swap out into my Kingdra and get that Dragon Breath Snipe. They're now going to come in with their final Pokemon, which is going to be Furret once again. We can go for Surf. We've already seen this does big damage. From this range, it won't quite get the knockout. However, I'm just going to look to shield here as they fire off a Trailblaze, wasting more energy. They come back in with the Shadow Kanto Marowak, but they cannot go for a full Mudslap farm down, I don't believe, and so the opponent forced to throw some energy. At this point, Bone Club will get the knockout. We can come back in with the Rapidash, and we can outpace them to a Drill Run. And because the Furret went and full sent a Trailblaze, they have no energy residual, which means we can go for the Incinerate farm down, and I'm able to take that game. So that's going to be it for today's video. If you did enjoy it, please make sure you leave a like, leave a comment letting me know, and as well, don't forget to respond to the question of the day if you haven't done so already. And if you want to see more content like this in the future, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on post notifications. That way you'll be notified whenever I upload a new video. Now, if you want to take your support to the next level, you can become a channel member with perks including early access to new videos, shoutouts at the end of each video, custom loyalty badges, and custom emojis to use in the comments of every video. I want to say a massive thank you to everyone that has become a channel member already. Your support is greatly appreciated. And with that being said, thank you so much for watching today's video, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.